Hello. So this is an audiobook of the book I'm writing called The Path to Arachnidor, and I very much appreciate you clicking on this. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm so grateful. This is just so I can get feedback before I even start to look for a publisher. Just to have a real audience to tell me what they think would really help, so I really appreciate it. Comment your thoughts, I guess, and here we go. Move, move, move! Barked Achaeus as he led the soldiers into the foreboding cave. They advanced in unison, the clanking of their heavy armor echoing through the darkness. As he followed behind the others, he pulled harshly on the ropes which bound the hands of Rasfamir the mage, who winced in pain and continued to unblinkingly gaze before him as he obediently followed behind. "Down with Basilius!" they chanted as they marched. "You know what to do, yes?" Achaeus whispered to the mage as he tightened the ropes. "Yes," he mumbled as he lowered his head. "You serve a worthless cause. You are nothing but Basilius's dog, living only to serve. But Berlin will soon be ours. After his capture, he will be the dog, begging for mercy as a mutt begs for scraps. His city will be surrendered to us. Even if it risks war with Arachnidor, we will prevail." How imbecilic to be led by a woman. "It won't work," the mage growled. "Aw, how pessimistic of you," he mocked. "Oh, would you look at that? We've made it." The group of soldiers split down the middle, forming a path for Achaeus and Rasfamir. Before them, sat atop a crude throne of rotting wooden bones, was the legendary Lord of the Goblins. No human was permitted to know his name. "And who would you be? Is this an attack?" he inquired, leaning forward as he gestured with his staff of bones. "Not an attack, but a bargain," he declared. "I, Achaeus of Melania, representing the Council of Melania, come forth with an offer." "And what would that be?" the Lord inquired as a swarm of his own soldiers surrounded his throne. "Access to magic, with which you may do what you please, in exchange for your allegiance." "What manner of magic?" "Every manner." "That is all? An opportunity that grand in exchange for something so simple?" "Yes, that is all that is required of you." "And how is one mage capable of making such a thing possible? Our spellcasting abilities have been stripped from us since the War of Berlin, as you know." "Because he is Rasfamir the Old, the very mage that stripped the ability from your kind in the first place. He, and he alone, is capable of returning it, and you must free him immediately after he has fulfilled his obligations." "Yes," he pondered. "Yes, I would be a fool to decline this opportunity. You have our allegiance." "Wonderful," he smirked. "Lillian, come here," Hattie called excitedly. Lillian rushed over. "Hattie, don't draw attention to yourself," she scolded. "We're going to get in trouble." "Stop your whining. So we're near each other. Who cares?" "Everybody cares. This is why we meet beyond the hills, so nobody sees us, especially not our parents." "Your mother is just another typical rich prat trying to have everything her way. We're outside of town. I can be as loud as I want." "Fine, shout all you want for all I care," Lillian huffed, "but by the gods, don't drag me into your shenanigans. Show me what you've collected so far." "Yes, that's why I called you over. Look at how many I've got," Hattie exclaimed as she presented her woven basket. It was filled about halfway with perfectly ripe blueberries, the indigo juices staining the straw. "What are you going to do with the berries? Eat them straight from the basket?" "I'll make preserves." Lillian hadn't the slightest idea of how to make preserves. Her mother had always preferred to buy jars from the marketplace rather than make them herself. "Lillian," a voice rang from over the hills. She bade Hattie farewell and fetched her basket, which was much fuller than Hattie's. She adjusted her jade-green woolen dress and scurried home. Lillian was greeted by her mother, Bailey Frostel, who looked quite disappointed. She was on the ground, apparently in the middle of trimming the short decorative bushes which lined the edge of their yard. "There you are. Who did you run off with?" Bailey inquired. Her melodious voice made it so she could never sound stern, so Lillian could not tell if she was angry. "Oh, nobody. I was simply singing to myself. I heard a second voice. You needn't lie." Lillian nervously adjusted her dress and rocked on her heels. "It was Hattie," she timidly admitted in a murmur. "I told you not to be around that girl," she mumbled, cutting an especially thick branch with her shears. "She's a bad influence, that one. You never disobey me, Lillian. Why have you grown so defiant?" "I've been friends with Hattie for a long while now. I don't understand what you have against her. If you'd only give her a chance, you'd see that she really cares. She's a good friend." "You know her parents. Hattie doesn't care. She was raised not to," said Bailey, gesturing with her shears. "Now go to the pond and rinse those berries so we can fix a pie." That night, Lillian and Bailey feasted on a large Cornish hen, along with some carrots and celery. A delicious blueberry pie was the pinnacle of their dinner. "Mother," Lillian mumbled as she ate her last bite. Yes, Lillian? Hattie called you a rich brat. Bailey did not look fazed. Hattie can say what you want. I just hope she doesn't rub off on you. Thank you for picking berries earlier today. I'm surprised you were able to get enough. The season's coming to an end. Well, I'm glad I did. Are you really that mad about me being with Hattie? Not particularly. I've learned that there's no use fretting. I know I can't stop you two from meeting. The morning sun peeked through the looming storm clouds as the two girls sat boredly gazing through their windows at one another. Lillian arose from her nook and sat herself at the dining table to read a book which she had been anxious to finish for a long while. Now, she thought, I should tidy up to surprise Mother. I'm sure she would appreciate it, but I'll have to wait till I finish reading before... Her thoughts were cut short by a rapid knock on the door. Only 2 knocks. This was how Hattie signaled that it was her. As Lillian expected, she opened the door to see her amber-haired friend. Lillian, I have an amazing idea, she started excitedly. What is it? We should explore the forest. Infernum Forest? Hattie nodded. I can't. You know I can't. I don't want to run into those beasts. Beasts? I don't know what you're talking about. Have you never heard the story? What story? Well, I haven't heard it since I was little, but from what I remember, this is how it went. One otherwise calm night, the farmer's livestock disappeared. This continued for about a week before they appointed a hunter to enter the forest and find the creature that had been eating the animals. He did as he was bade and returned, shaking so badly that he was unable to form a clear sentence or even stand without wobbling horribly. Eventually, once he calmed himself, he explained that he had encountered a pack of winged beasts. They chased him out and attacked him to the brink of death. That was enough to startle him that badly. He nearly died. That's just a tale. Come on, tell your mom you're leaving. Fine, but she's sleeping. I'll just go, she agreed, annoyed, closing and locking the door behind her. Isn't it a bit late to be asleep? She hasn't been feeling well recently. Together they walked to the end of Norwatch until they reached the lip of the forest. Lillian stood there, gazing apprehensively into the dense thicket as Hattie excitedly waited to delve into the forest. Are you ready? Hattie asked impatiently, feeling the exhilaration of their much-anticipated expedition. I'm ready, Lillian reluctantly sighed. But first, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, I've told you the tale, and you aren't reconsidering at all. We'll be fine. I can protect you. Now come on. The girls slowly crept into the forest, often finding themselves caught in an entanglement of thorned branches. The further they delved into the woods, the more its effects began to weigh on them. Despite the sun being at its highest point, their surroundings were completely void of light due to the dense leaves overhead. Which way shall we go? Inquired Hattie as they walked. Perhaps we should head back, Lillian recommended. Perhaps, Hattie considered, glancing around. But now that we're here, I have something else in mind. Lillian stopped. What kind of trouble are you trying to get into now? She inquired, knowing she would not like the answer. We could visit the goblin caves, she recommended with a mischievous smirk. Have you gone mental? Going to this forest was bad on its own, but I'm starting to think you have a death wish. Are you afraid? Hattie mocked smugly, crossing her arms. No, I would just like to return before my mother wakes up, Lillian fibbed. We won't be there long, I just want to see it in person. We already know it exists, isn't that enough? It won't be that long, we'll keep at a distance, I just want to see. Fine, Lillian agreed agitatedly. Let's go. They continued forcing their way through the forest until they happened upon a small clearing where they decided to rest. They stayed and conversed for almost 2 hours, shielding their heads as it unexpectedly began to rain. Lillian and Hattie instantaneously ceased their chatting upon hearing a branch snack behind them. Aggressive, gravelly breaths boomed over the sound of the rain like claps of thunder, filling their hearts with dread at the realization that they were defenseless. The vile creature slowly crawled from the thicket, crouched on all fours. The beast's keen claws left deep imprints in the mud as it emerged into the light. Its gleaming pale eyes and snake-like skin told the girls that they were facing a goblin. As quick as a wink, it pounced, sprang its long fangs. It swiftly reared, brandishing a shoddy wooden spear twice its size, and charged at them clumsily. Hattie swiftly acted, gripping Lillian by the wrist and sprinting towards the other side of the clearing. They heard a whoosh of air by their heads, so the goblin had thrown its spear at them. It struck Hattie in the arm, completely piercing through. She immediately fell to the ground and writhed in pain, leaving Lillian contemplating whether to stay by her side or run for help. As she glanced to and fro in a panic, the goblin dropped to the ground with a thud, a long, slender arrow between its eyes. Lillian glanced in the direction the arrow had been shot from, only to see the leg of a great spider step into the light. She kneeled over Hattie, preparing to receive a deadly bite from the beast, but none came. As she looked up, she saw that there was an elf mounted on the spider. A tall, pale elf with fair hair and hazel eyes. His cloak, under which was a suit of very handsome armor, flowed gracefully behind him. "Please, I need help," Lillian sobbed over Hattie, fearing that her friend would undoubtedly wind up dead. The elf dismounted his spider and patted its head reassuringly, then kneeled by Hattie and inspected her wound. "Ready?" he asked, placing his hand on the end of the spear. 1, 2, 3. Hattie wailed with pain as the elf jerked the spear out of her arm. "Wait, she'll bleed out," Lillian warned. "No, she will not." The elf rose and grabbed a small vial from the saddlebags which hung from the spider, then returned and poured it over Care with Hattie's wound. The bleeding ceased almost instantaneously, along with her screams. "Try moving your arm." Hattie struggled, but to no avail. Her arm did not move. The elf rose. "Where do you live? You must return home immediately." "Norwatch, sir," Lillian responded. "Do you know where that is?" "Yes, I'm stationed there. I will bring you both home." Hattie mumbled weakly. "I don't trust you to stay true to your word. You're an elf." His stare hardened. "What are you saying, Hattie? I'm an elf," Lillian gasped, looking at the stranger apologetically. "I apologize, sir. It is her upbringing. She knows not what she says. She's in pain, I understand." He picked Hattie up with a little effort and laid her gently across the spider's back. "Mount her and support your friend." Lillian struggled onto the saddle behind Hattie and held her in place. Together, they rode home. Lillian thanked the elf and walked up the path to her house. The sun had begun to set, and she couldn't imagine how worried her mother would be. As she expected, she opened the door to see Bailey sitting in her rocking chair in front of the fireplace. There came a knock on the door. It wasn't Hattie, it was the elf. "Come in," Bailey greeted. "What do you call yourself?" "I am Sir Advar of Arachnidor," he explained, "and I found your daughter with another in Infernum Forest today." "Advar, is that really you?" Bailey inquired as she rose. "Sorry, I don't believe I know you." "Bailey Frostle. My daughter, who I will be speaking to later," she shot Lillian a sharp glance. "Her name is Lillian Frostle." "Bailey? Goodness, you look so different. How is Aquilo?" "Oh, perhaps we should wait to discuss that topic. Lillian, honey, go upstairs and leave us be. I will be up soon." Lillian retired to her bedroom as Bailey led Advar to the dining room table, at which they sat across from each other. "First, I'd like to know what my daughter was doing in Infernum Forest." "I'm not entirely sure. I came across them while patrolling the area for goblins. She and another girl around the same age with amber hair and fair blue eyes were in a clearing deep in the forest. Lillian was crouched over her friend, frightened to her core, face to face with a goblin. A rogue one, I presume, not belonging to any malignity. They never stray that far from the cave, and there was only one. The other girl's left arm had been impaled by the beast's spear, lost all use of it. I knew this had something to do with that girl. My Lillian would never put herself in such peril." "Yes, as I was saying, I slew the goblin and brought both the girls home, and now here I am, conversing with you. There is something important I must speak to you about." "Yes?" "You should first speak with Aquilo about this, but you need to get your family to Arachnidor as quickly as possible. The goblins are advancing. I think they have allied with a more capable adversary. Perhaps man has realized that they are able to manipulate those below them to their advantage, as is their nature. They have threatened war against Arachnidor. Within the next day they will be restricting access to only guards and the prestigious. Lady Aranya has sent a letter by Raven warning me of this." "Oh, about Aquilo." "Oh," Advar gasped. "Has tragedy befallen him?" He unknowingly stumbled into a goblin's cave and began mining their metal. The next morning, his head was on a pike, stuck in the earth by our front door. Poor Lillian was the first to see. "My condolences. I must be going. Good luck with your daughter. Don't be too hard on her. Her mind seems heavy with worry. Blessings to you and your family." "To you as well. Goodbye, Advar. I will consider your advice." Bailey softly walked up the stairs so as to not startle Lillian, then gently tapped on her door and entered. She was sitting on her bed, her head buried in a book. Bailey removed her necklace, a perfectly cut emerald on a silver chain, and presented it to her. "What's this?" Lillian inquired, looking solemnly at Bailey with eyes sunken and red from crying. "My necklace. I want you to have it. God forbid you decide to wander back into the forest, you will have protection. Thank you. Lillian graciously accepted the necklace from her mother and donned it. But how could this protect me? It emanates an ethereal energy when danger grows near, tells you when to flee. Your father gifted it to me as an anniversary gift. Oh, you don't have to give this to me. No, I want you to have it. And this? Bailey pulled a key from her pocket and gently handed it to Lillian. Is this for the chest under the stairs? What does it hold? A map, a sword, and some armor, but the armor is heavy. It would do you better to leave it if anything were to happen. She then began to recite a poem. Our hearts will forever beat in sync. To a mother's love none can compare. And when one day that beat is broken, a heavy heart we both will share. When death is to whisk me away and I leave this mortal realm one day, I ask only that you remember this poem to recite when you feel most alone, though you will never be truly alone, for a mother's love you forever hold. I hope that's simple enough for you to remember, she chuckled, closing the door behind her and leaving Lillian with her thoughts. Hattie? Her mother called gently as she entered the room. How was your arm? It's completely lame. I can't even pull up my covers, she wept. I'm not surprised. That spear must have severed a tendon. Will it heal on its own? Hattie inquired after pondering for a while. Not as far as I know, and sadly we can't afford to have anyone help you, her mother explained solemnly, patting Hattie on the head and carefully pulling her blanket over her. Who was the elf that spoke to me? I don't know, but he saved us. Typical. He probably expected compensation for his heroism, those elves. Did he ask to be compensated? No, he did not. He said you were with Lillian, she growled, and Hattie knew that she would be reproached at some point. Yes, I was. What is so wrong with Lillian anyway? She is a loyal and caring person. She is a mutt, the child of an elf and a human. She's a freak of nature. You know what the elves did. They invaded our land, slaughtered our children, and stole our crops. Because we overthrew Salanthia, elves should not have their ears rounded with a knife as punishment for simply existing. We expelled them from their own land. I hope you don't express those opinions of yours in public. I am not going to argue with you over this any longer. Good night. Hattie looked up as her father trudged into the room, a lit candelabra in one hand and the other behind his back. His tired eyes slowly swept the room as he pondered whether to speak. Hattie, I must give you something. We both spoke with the elf and agreed that it is time to take precautions. Good night, Alice. You should be off to bed. Hattie's mother turned and left the room with her head held high. He removed his right hand from behind his back, revealing a keenly crafted blade, engraved with dwarven characters which Hattie could not decipher. She took it gently from his hands and inspected it. What's going on? She asked, cautiously running her finger along the blade. I give you my sword, her father stated warmly. It's rescued me from peril many times, and I hope it does the same for you. I'm at a loss for words, Hattie stuttered. Why are you doing this? Has something happened? The goblins have threatened war on Arachnidor, an elven kingdom west of here. Your mother does not want you to end up there. You know how she is. But I think you should if the need arises. Arachnidor? Yes, I know where that is. Lillian's mother's from that place. It's been mentioned a lot lately. If they do continue with their threats, it will likely affect us. I need you to be safe. Promise you'll do whatever it takes. I promise. Hattie smiled eagerly. Lillian sprung up, breathing rapidly and grateful to be in her own room again. She had never been more glad to see her beautifully weathered bookcase, her creaky floorboards which welcomed her every time she entered the room, and her handsome withering rose which sat in a vase on her nightstand. Her mother had cast a simple spell on it, which was the reason behind its longevity. Then 2 knocks on the door interrupted the silence. It's pitch black outside, thought Lillian as she crept down the stairs, meticulously avoiding the ones that squeaked. What could she possibly need at this hour? Just as she had expected, she answered the door to Hattie, her arm in a makeshift sling. What do you need, Hattie? Lillian questioned, noticing how cold it was outside. Throw on a jacket and let's go. I'm not leaving. Look what's happened to you, and you still don't see? You're being ignorant, Hattie. I just can't see why you don't realize that. Your arm is useless now. You've already suffered consequences for your recklessness and still couldn't care less, lectured Lillian exasperatedly. Yes, I know very well what the consequences are. It's their fault my arm is lame. I want to take revenge. You're delusional. This is exactly my point. You can't just take revenge on an entire malignity. They'll tear you to pieces and feast on you. Let's at least check it out. I only want to see it in person. No. I won't take no for an answer. Hattie growled menacingly as she grabbed Lillian by the wrist and pulled her down the steps. Lillian closed the door behind them with a huff, and together they returned to the edge of the forest. I think this is where we entered last time, Hattie recalled, eyeing the bushes which they had picked clean of blueberries the previous day. I really don't want to do this. You do remember the goblin, right? Or did it destroy your memory as well as your arm? There's no need to act smart with me. As I've already stated, we are going. Hattie barked formidably as she grabbed Lillian by the wrist and led her into the forest. After an hour's walk, they came across a fork in the densely vegetated path. We've gone the wrong way, cried Lillian. Don't you see? This is perfect. Look, there's a sign. Hattie responded boisterously as she dashed to the sign, stumbling over thick roots along the way. It says Oakenville is to the right and Tresemme is to the left. Under Tresemme it says Goblin Settlement along the path, so I suppose we should turn left. Lillian begrudgingly followed Hattie down the left path, knowing that there was no swaying her. What exactly do you plan to do once we find the cave? Lillian inquired after a long silence. If we ever find them, and if you wish to see the inside, you can do that alone. I just want to see the outside. After a few minutes we can leave, I promise. Wait, be quiet. What is that? Lillian commanded, her voice dropping to a whisper. Hundreds of chanting voices were slowly rising from the distance, which carried the threat of a great battle. Hattie, there's no doubt that those are the voices of goblins, and they mean to do us harm, Lillian warned. You're right. We should get closer to hear what they're chanting. Hattie, listen to me and perish the thought. We are going home before we get ourselves killed. I don't hear every word they're saying, but I can hear enough to know that they mean to bring war upon us. We are going home and warning everybody of what to expect. You can't! Then they'll know we were together, and worse yet, they'll know we entered the forest. I don't care. The repercussions of not warning them are greater than those of being in the forest. I see what you mean. Come, we're going home. The girls quickly left the path and plunged into the deep thicket from which they came. The voices continued to chant ceaselessly, striking fear into their hearts, which encouraged them to hurry. How much longer until we make it out of this godforsaken forest? Lillian inquired through gasps of breath. I'm not sure, Hattie barked stridently, holding her arm steady in its sling. I can run no longer. We can't stop. Lillian! Lillian! What's going on? Lillian! Lillian's world began to spin. The trees surrounding them became nothing but blurs of deep green and brown. Her legs gave out beneath her. She was shrouded in darkness, making her way through a dark labyrinth of stone and ore. After a while of confusedly wandering, she found herself in an unfamiliar place, a great cave decorated like a dining hall of some sort. The only sound in this odd place was a small leak in the ceiling, which dripped rhythmically, and only added to the disconcerting ambience. On both sides of her were wooden long tables, the benches of which were vacant. On one lay an indiscernible mass. She inquisitively proceeded toward it, and dropped to her knees when she realized what it was. Her own mangled face stared back at her, its lifeless eyes piercing through her as it lay with its mouth agape. What is this? This can't be real, she muttered to herself in utter disbelief as she rose to her feet and turned away. She approached the door on the other side of the hall in the hopes that it was an exit, then realized that there were muffled voices coming from the other side and pressed her ear against it. She's not waking up, a familiar voice cried. What have you done? Another responded frantically. Wake up! A voice rang above all others, as if from the heavens. Lillian looked above her. Lillian, wake up! The stone walls and dirt floor faded to black. Wake up! Lillian sat upright. She was in her bed, her mother and Hattie by her side. Mother, please, listen to me. The goblins. We heard them chant. They're coming. Hattie told me. Baylor responded worriedly. Hattie, have you warned your parents yet, or did you come straight here? No, I have not, and so I must now go. Please get some rest, Lillian. Hattie rushed back home. You were in the forest again, against my wishes, Bailey scolded. I did only as she bade me. You cannot let her do this to you. I know you're a rational girl. How did I get here? Did she carry me all the way? I heard a knock and answered the door to Hattie, worried out of her mind with you in her arms. Together we carried you to bed. Is what she says true? Yes, it is. I couldn't hear much of what they were saying, only that they were preparing to wage war. It's horrible, Bailey mumbled, as she turned to look out the window. I must go. Remember the poem I told you? Keep it in your memories, for I'm not sure of what will happen out there. Please don't risk yourself, Lillian begged, her heart pounding. Staying would be risking you. And with that, Bailey left. Lillian eventually, although it took long, settled into an uneasy rest. And finally, that is the end of the chapter. I started doing this at 11, and now it's 2:30, so I'm definitely so glad that I'm done. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.